You're listening to Porn-Free Masculinity, where you connect to your recovery and your destiny.
Well, hey, Rob, glad to be back with you for another time in front of the mirror. And I've got a quote. In fact, it's a quote that I've loved for a long time. I loved it so much that my wife and daughter had it made into a print.
All right.
And it hangs on my wall. And it is from a late 90s movie, The Matrix. There's a difference between knowing the path and walking the path.
Oh, wow.
Said by Morpheus, the great guide in the story of The Matrix. And so when I say there's a difference between knowing the path and walking the path, what comes up in you?
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad that's a great quote. And I've actually used that movie or parts of that movie several times to talk about recovery. So this one's very easy for me. Man, I spent 4.5 years left braining, studying my way to success. Like, I'm not joking really. I really did. This is the honest to God truth. I thought recovery was figuring out how to stop touching yourself, figuring out how to stop looking at, material that objectified women. And then just pouring into your head a bunch of information. And I probably podcast hundreds of hours in those first 4.5 years. I probably listened to hundreds of hours of sermons. I started picking up pastors across the country that I admired and had different styles and flavors. I started reading books for the first time. No, this is not a joke. I hadn't read a book in 25 years. The first 4.5 years of recovery, I probably read 30 books. Hey, good for me, right?
Congratulations.
It didn't lead to real, lasting, deep change. I was not walking the path. I just wasn't. I thought I was. I wholeheartedly, I thought this was the path. I really did. And I would say if I was a pie chart, a change was a pie chart for me, I probably made 40% change, maybe even 60% change in how I viewed life, how I viewed women, how I viewed my heart, how I viewed relationship with my former spouse and kids. And I think they noticed that. I think they would all reflect back that they noticed some change. But when it came down to it, Chris, I just was not changing the way that I related to life.
Yes.
And emotion and difficulty and conflict. Like those kind of interpersonal, relational components that hardwire us to others were simply being still led out of a very old, young place in my life. And it was, and it's interesting. And my former spouse was so kind during this journey. She would say things like, "Hey, there's probably some things in your past with your mom and dad you might want to look at." And I would be like, no, I think maybe, but I don't know. I think I got this. I got another book. I got to read, And then, then a few months later, she'd be like, "Hey, I don't know. You sure you don't want to look into your past and maybe look at some of the things, from when you grew up?" And I'd be like, "I don't know. I'm not ready. I don't think so. I think I'm good." And so, she really helped try to guide me to this idea of looking at the roots of addiction. I was too busy simply trying to spray weed killer on them.
Yeah.
And I wasn't walking the path.
Great analogy. Spray weed killer on them. I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
Because I think that's resonates so strongly with me, is that if I can just make the bad stuff go away.
Yeah.
And, that was I'm like you. I have to confess, I still don't read a lot of books, but I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I do a lot of audiobooks, which I guess counts as reading a book. I don't know.
I'll give it to you.
Yeah. But, I had a job when my recovery began that was had a lot of time on my hands to listen. And I was soaking in the data and trying to spray that weed killer.
Yeah.
You know, as long as the weeds were going away, then and everything looked good, then I was fine. But I resonate really strongly with you as you're learning, and your former spouse was still seeing the same version of Rob.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
Pushing you into other places, and maybe she didn't know any better either of learning, maybe, but there's, I mean, my spouse hardened up. I mean, probably first 5 years into recovery. My recovery journey dates back about a decade. First 5 years into recovery, nothing changed. In fact, I got a little more compliant in those first 5 years because out of desperation, I was trying to do anything to be the good husband. And she hardened up, and it actually made her more withdrawn, emotionally withdrawn. And it wasn't until for me that it became about that analogy, which I can't tell you how much I love the analogy of walking the path.
Yeah.
I can't tell you. It's just like even as I'm saying the words, like I feel little butterflies coming up because there is such a trueness to it. And there's a couple of stories, and I'll save them for later conversations. We can talk about like experiences that really anchored in, but there's a couple of experiences in my life where I literally had to walk a trail. And I knew intellectually what the trail was going to be.
Yeah.
But the difference between what I knew intellectually about the trail and the experience of walking the trail were night and day.
Yeah.
And I would have never learned anything by just talking about or studying the trail. It took getting out, risking, being in a place where I'm moving volitionally into something new to learn. And I'll just say this. I think that quote for me is more about understanding who I am and what kind of guy I really am, and that age-old masculine question: do I have what it takes?
Oh wow, yeah. That's so good. I in many ways, I was not walking the path, and I know this because if I reflect back, I was just simply trying to change my behavior.
Yes,
recovery for me was a behavioral management exercise. And at the end of the day, I was still a jackass when it came to relationships. I couldn't create containment or attunement long enough to sit in my wife's pain, and it would turn toward me, and I would dump on myself, and in a very narcissistic way, I would make it about me. I would just simply rob her space in those moments because the shame was still too great. And then finally, I know that I was just walking the path. I was trying to manage behaviors because I was still holding on to a couple of masks that I wanted to be known as a good guy, a good man. And I was still choosing to lie and to hide during that window. And in my mind, right, in my own heart, I was like, well, I used to lie 100 times a year, and now I'm only lying, 10 times a year, right? That's progress, and I had convinced. What's that? Say that again?
Fewer weeds.
Fewer weeds, yeah. And of course, for me, that felt good, but that's no way to build a relationship. And so, yeah, I really relate to that. And I would just say this: I think for me, the turn again came after separation, announcement of divorce, and I finally came to the realization that I do want to get to the roots. Like I had to make that choice. And I'll never forget the image that I pictured in my own mind as I decided I'm going to go back in time. I'm going to look at the roots of why I'm a jackass, or why at least I act like one. And you know what I thought of? I thought those are really dark caves.
Yes.
Like the imagery was so vivid for me. They were dark caves with no lights. I didn't know how far they went, and I didn't know what was going to happen if I went in there. And honestly, that was more terrifying than facing divorce for me. Mm-hmm. It really was. It was so freaking terrifying. And that's when I made that choice and I started to do that kind of work. That's when I can say I started walking the path.
And that work, I mean, it's gut wrenching. Just what you're saying. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do. And I know, we've shared in that work together. Yeah. But the reality is, I'm still doing that work.
Yeah, me too.
I'm still learning to walk.
Yeah.
Because walking's easy on the days when I've got a full belly and a wind at my back, but then there's days that it's, cloudy skies and cold winds, and I just don't feel like it.
Yeah.
And that's my choice for the day.
Yeah.
Do I keep doing this very unpleasant work to get to a greater end,
Well, and I know we're getting ready to wrap this session up, but I would love to come back and explore what's been the payoff. What has been the payoff to going into those dark caves, to walking the path, to doing that difficult work, right? And has it become easier, or is it just as hard as it was when you first started? I've got a perspective on that. Yeah, I'd love to explore that with you. Yeah.
Well, we'll tease it out another time, man. It's great to sit with you. Always good to be in the same space, on the same screen with my brother, Rob.
Great to spend time with you, too.
All right. Bye, guys.
Don't forget to subscribe for more episodes. You can connect with Chris at pornfreemasculinity.com.